Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for November's labor release media briefing from the Texas Workforce Commission in December, of course. We're glad that you're all here to discuss the most recent employment data for the state of Texas. We have Chairman Bryan Daniel available to answer questions today about this most recent report, as well as Gabriel Guzman with our Labor Market Information Department. Now, today's briefing is specific to the Texas labor market data release, so we will not field questions unrelated to the information released this morning. Please note that some region-specific questions might require further research, and if we can't answer your question right now during the briefing, just go ahead and email me at press@twc.texas.gov, and we will work to fulfill that request. And I will go ahead and put that email in the chat here in just 1 minute as well. This briefing runs until 1:30. After we have opening remarks from Chairman Daniel and then the presentation from Mr. Guzman, we will take questions. To ask a question, please raise your virtual hand in the chat, and I'll go ahead and turn on your camera and mic. You can also type a question in the chat if you prefer, and we'll ask it. And please be aware we are recording this media briefing, and we will make it available to you shortly after it's ended. Again, thanks for attending, and now let's hear the latest data from Chairman Daniel.
Hey, thanks, Angela. This is Bryan Daniel, Texas Workforce Commission, joined by Mike Guzman here today. Appreciate everyone making time to join us this afternoon. Our release goes out in the morning, and we just try to be available throughout the day to answer questions. We've had a lot of good questions over the last several months, and so we just want to make sure that we're providing you the information that you need. Hopefully you saw our release earlier this morning, so you know the substance of kind of what Texas has done. A couple things I'd point out, just some observations that I made after seeing the data. 12 months now of fairly well sustained good growth in employment. But what I'm noticing is that over the year, we've had it about just a little over 650,000 jobs, which is when you compare that to the same time period from December 2018 to December 2019, we added about 330,000 jobs. And so we're seeing even increased strength in the growth this year. That kind of job growth is a result of employers certainly adding payroll positions. But I think there's some underlying strength in the workforce that's helping to drive that. Texas industries are growing. We're seeing growth across multiple sectors simultaneously. I think that's good, and it shows a lot of strength. We saw a big jump in leisure and hospitality, to include food service, restaurants, and some entertainment venues. And so I think we're still continuing to see some good growth there, but we're also seeing growth in some more durable industries. And I think that's pretty good in terms of future strength for the economy, and certainly the workforce. We'll continue to watch that. While all that's happening, our participation rate, our labor force participation rate, the percentage rate still remains about where it was, which is higher than the national average, and fairly good just in terms of series that we've been tracking. Unemployment rate, of course, stayed at 4%. Those are just some highlights, and I think some points that kind of jump out at you from the page. Mike, your senior member of our labor market information staff, I think his slideshow will give you greater detail, greater context. So let me just turn it over to him. Let's get those details out there, and then hopefully if there are any questions, we can answer those. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. Mike Guzman here, Manager of Economic Analysis, and I will provide a little bit of detail, as the Chairman said, over the data we just released today. So as the Chairman said, the first chart here, the Texas unemployment rate remained the same over the month. Has actually remained at 4% for the past 3 months. The U.S. also remained the same at 3.7%. That actually remained just for two months in a row. As you can see there by the chart, the Texas rate in blue is about 0.3 tenths above the U.S. rate. However, the Texas rate is also the 7th lowest in series history, dating back to 1976. So that is over 560 months of actual readings there. Overall, the unemployed improved over the month. It fell by 10,400. And the unemployed stands at its lowest point since February 2020. So improvement there since the large increase due to COVID. Annually, if we look at that, the Texas rate fell about 0.9 points from 4.9. Its unemployed fell about 116,000 persons. So that represents an improvement of 20 straight months. If we look at the regions, we see that 16 areas fell over the month. About 6 stayed the same, and 3 were increasing overall since November 21 over the year annually, all unemployment rates fell. Looking at the labor force participation rate, for those as a reminder, some of those, this is the percentage of the population 16 and older non-institutionalized that are either working or actively seeking work. So in other words, participating in the labor market. So while the Texas unemployment rate is higher still than the U.S. rate, the labor force participation rate is also higher than the U.S. As the graph shows there, we're about 1.4 points above the U.S. Texas has a reading of 63.5 versus 62.1. So Texas and the U.S. actually did drop a little bit in the participation rate, a tenth of a point over the month. Not a lot. We're still above the pre-pandemic reading there, but definitely, you know, we're still above that level. So that is a good point to make there. We have consistently remained at or above the pre-pandemic rate for about 10 months in a row now. In November 2022, the Texas labor force participation rate was about a tenth of a point, above the pre-pandemic rate of 63.4. If we look at the areas, this map shows the MSAs, that civilian labor force growth over the year. The areas in brown are those that decreased. Overall, Texas is up about 2.2%. In terms of labor force, while the U.S. is up only 1.3%. That translated for Texas about 311,400 people. And overall, since February 2020, the pre-COVID mark, we increased 635,200. If you look at the right there, these are the areas that we have that are adding the most, grew the most in labor force, and then those that all had a decline. For the areas that grew the fastest or the most, you know, a lot of them are the large MSAs, Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. Definitely large population centers have lots of job growth. Houston actually had not grown as quickly as far as the pandemic, but the civilian labor force had actually increased as oil and gas had increased. So definitely it's catching up in terms of labor force. The areas that declined the most, you know, were led by Abilene at -1 and El Paso at -0.9. Focusing, on job count, Texas has increased 30 of the last 31 months. So still considering that trend after COVID, we added 33,600 jobs over the month for a 0.2% increase. And as the chairman said, good job growth. We've actually set 13 consecutive months of employment highs. We stand at 13,672,900 jobs. I just want to talk a little bit about the performance compared to last year in terms of year to date from January to November. We added 566,600 jobs for the year. Compared to 2022, which was the highest in record, we had about 618,400 jobs. So overall performance a little bit down past last year, but still the second strongest performance in series history dating back to 1990. Overall, we added for the year 657,600. This is from November to November for a 5.1% growth rate, which actually marked the highest or the fastest growth rate of any state in the nation. The private sector also grew even faster at 5.8%. And for the 18th consecutive month, every major private industry had positive annual growth. This affected, of course, the COVID, I don't want to say recovery anymore, but the COVID expansion. Texas and both the U.S. had continued to move along that path. Texas stood at 105.5%, which was about 0.3 points above the previous month. The U.S. at 101%, about 0.2% improvement there. So overall, what that 105.5% translates to is about 706,700 positions. To the right of that, you'll see the major industries that we have. Texas led or outpaced the U.S. And 10 of 11 major industries. The ones in green are the ones that have actually surpassed their February 2020 pre-COVID level. I just wanted to say that also we did lose 2 industries over the month in terms of that threshold. They were construction and government. Government wasn't that much. It basically lost about 1,000 jobs over the month, and therefore it was negligible as far as that percentage. For construction, there was a revision last month, so 2 months had missed that mark. On the next chart, this shows the over the month change for the 11 major industries. Overall, 7 major industries increased over the month. They were led by leisure and hospitality, which actually led all industries for 3 straight months. This was mostly driven by accommodation and food services, which has a large majority of that major industry that gained 16,700, followed by education and health services, which gained 5,400, and mostly due to healthcare and social assistance. Mining and logging, which was a kind of a drag before, it took a while for it to come back, is coming back strong as of late, and added about 3,800. For those that dropped over the month, construction lost 3,900, and I kind of wanted to focus on trade, transportation, and utilities just to clear some things up. Lost 700 jobs. I know a lot of you are probably asking, this is the Christmas shopping season. Why is that? This is seasonally adjusted numbers, so it looks at the overall trend. When looking at not seasonally adjusted numbers, we see that over the month, it actually added 25,100. Now, that's a little bit softer than previously. The 10-month average is a little over 40,000. So overall, we still add jobs, not as strong as typical. So the seasonally adjusted numbers kind of show that trend being softer. Here's a look at the average hourly earnings for major industries. Overall, the Texas total private average hourly earnings was $30.38. We had about 4 private industries that are actually larger or had more than that. First led by financial activities at $41.17 and professional and business services. Overall, total private earnings decreased by 23 cents from October to November, whereas all in the last 12 months, it increased $1.09 for an annual growth rate of 3.7%. Overall, all industries went up about over the year. Construction actually had the largest gain of about 10% over the month, and so that was definitely the leader in that particular category. This chart we introduced last month just kind of looks at the annual growth rate versus like the axis, the y-axis, the one vertical one. It shows basically what an area did, an MSA did recently, the past 3 months. And if you were to take that number and compare it or make it equal to an annual growth rate, so you can compare it like how it did recently, that gives you a clear indication. The MSAs in blue are the ones that have recovered. Of course, the size of the sphere, the circle, is the size of the MSA, Dallas and Houston being the largest. The ones in yellow are the ones that have not recovered to their pre-pandemic level. I just wanted to focus that most of the areas in the Texas and the state of Texas are in the upper quadrant, where you'd want to be. They have both positive annual growth and recently performing strong, also positive recently. The areas in yellow are mostly considered with or mostly concentrated in oil and gas. That has come on strong as of late, and as that increases, the wages also they help support the area industries. As those wages go up, the area people are able to buy goods and services, things like that. So, this is the look at the Texas claims. It continues to be low. The 4-week average for initial claims was up 1,560 over the month, or at about 11.9%. It's actually a little bit above right before, if you say the February level at 13,130. But if you look at the prior 2 years before COVID, that'd be November 18 and November 19, the movement was about 11.9 and 12%. So in terms of percentage increase, it's about the same amount. Continued claims, these are claims processed or already verified by TWC. They were up 618 over the month, or 0.6%, but still very low compared to pre-COVID levels of 132,000 just before the pandemic. And actually, for the level itself, you have to go back to 2007 when 93,296 was recorded. So we have to go back even further to find out how low this particular reading is in terms of comparisons. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that presentation, Gabriel and Chairman. Very good information that we were sharing there. Now, if you do have any questions, please go ahead and raise your hand, and I will go ahead and call on you and unmute you so that you can ask your question for either the Chairman or for Gabriel. Any hands? Don't be shy. I'll give it just a minute. All right, and I have a raised hand from Katarina with Bloomberg News. Let me go ahead and you can go ahead and turn on your mic and camera. I'm seeing that it shows you're unmuted, Katarina.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. There you are. Yes.
I'm sorry about my continued issues with this. Um, so I just wanted to ask about the labor force. You mentioned that you've seen some strength in it in the Texas labor force overall, and certainly those participation numbers look good. But I just wanted to ask kind of where some of the challenges remain. In bringing people, back to the workforce. Of course, we had the participation rates were a little bit higher in like 2018 and, a couple of years before the pandemic. So I just wanted to ask about some challenges that people are facing coming back.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's one I actually have spent a lot of time looking into. So we're looking at 2019 like numbers right now in terms of labor force participation rate. Certainly, our total payroll jobs is actually significantly higher than what we saw in 2019. 2019 in Texas was a really good year economically across most of the sectors that we're looking at. And it's been a kind of a useful comparison point. You mentioned that maybe earlier in 2017, late 2017 and really 2018, that the labor force participation rate might have been a little higher, and it was. It's well within its natural variability. I think what we're seeing, and anecdotally from employers, this is what I'm hearing, and then what I'm able to sort of verify that's going on, both numerically from what Mike and his crew can tell us in terms of numbers, and just what we're seeing in the workforce is this. We've experienced and continue to experience a bit of a skills mismatch, just in the fact that there's 500,000 open jobs or in the state that have been announced by employers that they'd like to hire. Some of those are aspirational hires. Some of them they need them right now. And I think the reason we're still not seeing more people move off of either the unemployment benefits rolls, or that they're still telling census pollsters that they're unemployed, and so they're showing up in the unemployment rate, is that they're either interviewing and finding out they don't have the complete set of skills that they need, or they're looking at the job announcement and they're thinking to themselves that they don't have the skills that they need, and so they don't really advance their candidacy for that job. And this would be for hourly jobs, or even some salary jobs, and some jobs we might consider in the professional sector. And I think for us, we've got to zero in on what this skills mismatch is. I think we can give even a little more attention to that at our workforce boards in terms of helping people find the training programs that will help them close that skills gap and be able to get into those jobs. But I'd also tell you that employers are talking to me quite a bit about just the sheer number of no-show, no-calls for interviews. They'll set up interviews and the people won't show up. I'm presuming that means there's opportunities in perhaps some gig work, perhaps some entrepreneurial kind of work, things that won't show up in our employment numbers because they're not reported to us the same way payroll jobs are. That sector's strong too. It doesn't show up in a payroll jobs report, but you can look at it in other places and see the same thing. And so I think Mike showed you a good chart on wages and kind of where we are. We saw pretty significant wage inflation a year ago at like 9%. It's about 3.7% today, which is 3.5% we consider, somewhat kind of normal for where we might see things this time of year. So wages are good, which gives people more opportunities. I think people with more flexible skills or more skills are plugging in. I think that what we're still seeing for employers is the skills gap, but also solving some of these, I think HR folks would say soft skills in terms of showing up for your interview on time, prepared, ready to do the job. I think that could be helpful as well, but I think that people just have so many opportunities, they're pursuing those. I like the question, and it's one where we still see a tremendous amount of upside potential, and employers are telling us that in terms they'd like to hire more people, and we're still seeing available people to come into the workforce. But we've really got to work on this the skills situation and find convenient, flexible, cost-effective ways for people to complete their skill set so they can get these better jobs that are out there.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chairman. And thank you for that question, Katerina. And I now have David, also with Bloomberg News, who has his hand raised. So please go ahead and feel free to turn on your mic and camera, David.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Great. I just wanted to drill in a little bit more on the mining and logging, and to the extent that you can sort of speak specifically about oil and gas jobs. From all the different slides that you showed, it just sort of seems like they're more of the laggard. I know you said as of recently, they've been making some gains, and I know you talked about that last month as well. Are they a little bit of a drag on the overall state numbers? Would we see even better numbers if oil and gas was hiring a little bit more than what it is right now?
I'm going to let Mike dig into the numbers, but before he does, I'd answer it this way. What I'm seeing is that they're making steady progress to a recovery number that would put them closer to a number that we would have seen in 2019, 2020, immediately prior to the pandemic. I don't think they're a drag on the overall workforce because they're showing pretty significant growth. And over the 12-month period, just the over the year growth, I mean, they're like sitting at like 20% growth. So I think they were slower starting on their growth. I think technology's changed really the nature of jobs that are in the oil and gas sector. We're seeing a lot more technology, and not just at the geologist or the engineer level. I think even the roughnecks are using a little more technology out in the oil field. Natural gas collection, same sort of thing. I just think you've seen a lot more technology. I also think, and this is anecdotal, Mike's not going to have a chart for this one, but I think anecdotally from employers, we hear there's a lot of jobs that share skill sets between the construction sector and the oil and gas sector. And there's a lot of swapping of jobs between folks who have that shared set of skills. It is purely coincidental on Mike's chart, but oil and gas gained 3,800 in the same month that construction kind of lost back 3,900. I think that's purely coincidental, Mike, but I think it shows you that there's probably is some truth to what employers are telling us just in terms of skills portability, flexibility, and just a movement between the two sectors. I think it's technology driven. I think they have been slow to grow, but they picked up their growth. I think they're catching up to the other sectors. My personal opinion would be that the oil and gas sector, energy sector, mining and logging as a whole has not been a drag on the workforce. We've seen tremendous recovery. This 5.5% growth that we've seen has been good. But I need to pitch it to Mike because he's got context in the numbers that I think you're going to want. And I think he can do a better job of kind of painting the numerical picture for you, Mike.
Sure. To answer your question, David, in terms of overall employment, oil and gas is not a lot in terms of percentage of the total non-farm. It's actually one of the smallest in terms of employment. But if you look at it from another economic sense, like GDP, then or in terms of trade or export, Texas has a very strong oil and gas sector, and that's where its value comes from, is the actual amount that's considered. As far as a drag on the economy, the oil and gas, it depends a lot of geopolitical events, global events worldwide. So even with rising oil prices, it tends to, the employment tends to follow that. So as of late, oil and gas has led all industries, I believe, a little over 10 months annual growth rise, and the chairman is right, about over 20% annual growth. So that one has come on strong as of late. But in terms of affecting the overall numbers, no, it's a small percentage in terms of the amount of employment.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that question, David, and for that response. We probably have time for about one more question. Does anyone else want to raise their virtual hand, or you can put it in the chat as well, and I can ask them that question, or give it just another moment for any more raised hands. All right. Well, thank you all for coming today. Our next labor release is going to be January 20th for December. I'm going to now leave it with the chairman with closing remarks.
Angela, thank you. Listen, I really appreciate everybody spending time with us talking about this. You know, you guys have your beat that you cover for your publication or your broadcast station, and I appreciate you giving context to these Texas labor figures. We're pretty proud of our workforce here. I think they've been doing great things. Employers have been hiring, you know, quite a number of Texans to go to work in these jobs, and that's across the board. We've been very interested in the growth. It shows a lot of strength to the Texas economy as we carry into the new year. You know, I'm very hopeful that that momentum continues to carry with them. We're doing a lot of things to help match employers with employees that would like to be working there and employers who'd like to have them working there. And we'll continue to do that kind of work. And so we're working directly with employers, directly with employees, and certainly directly with claimants who might still be on unemployment benefits. And really do enjoy taking this opportunity to dig into the numbers. Can't do it without our guys at our labor market information section here at TWC. And then don't wait for this. If you have questions or you need more information or you have some concerns or something you'd like to run down, please let us know. We're here to provide information, and we take that very seriously, and we hope you'll give us a chance to do that.